Everything. Everything has changed. Well, let me start at the top. I think that the leadership is in a good place. I have utmost confidence in the leadership of today, that they're steering the university in the right direction. I personally was dean from 2009 to 2013. I stood for a term, 1 5-year term. It was a very difficult decision to make because I still had children that were at school, and it was very difficult for the family. But it was very deliberate on my part to change the direction, the course of the faculty from being a teaching institution to being a research-driven institution, which I felt was imperative to the future of the university and its standing. And since I've retired or resigned, or I'm leaving, I've been given so many accolades for having done exactly that, having fostered a culture that research matters, that research counts, that if you're not a researcher, that you don't get promoted, and that it endures to the benefit not just of yourself but also to the students, that you are able to be a player in the field and not just a teacher as if you were at a technical or vocational college. And I think that that's also, post my time maybe, but it's also rubbed off on the students. We now have a compulsory research paper for the LLB degree, which was actually fostered by the Council for Higher Education when they introduced the new LLB curriculum. All lawyers have to be able to do research. If you don't do research, you can't help your clients find out the answer to their problems. So there's no standard textbook that will tell you who gets to inherit or what the contents of the contract must be, or how much damages you can claim, or whatever the case may be. So I think that it's been difficult, but I think it's been a good move, and it's changed the whole culture of the faculty completely. So I'm actually quite proud of my term as dean. It's not just about renovating the moot court and about putting in a new kitchen on the ground floor, and professionalizing the GLA program. It's a graduate lecturing assistance program, by providing proper offices for them. But it's also about the whole culture of the academia, because that's what academia is about. What else has changed at UWC? Certainly, even before my time, but during my time as dean, student numbers grew exponentially. And that was not by choice. That was because it was foisted on UWC by the Department of Higher Education. So we grew from, I think, when I started at the Community Law Center, which is now the Dalla Omar Institute, and then I joined the faculty in the year 2000. And at that time, the total student body of the university was, I think, less than 10,000 students. And within 13 years, we grew to 25,000 students with no extra staff. So that placed an enormous strain on admin staff, but also on teaching staff. So classes grew from 100 students to 600, 800 students in a very short space of time. That was required from us at UWC as part of the, I don't know whether you know anything about this, but around the year 2000, the then Minister of Education, the dearly departed Professor Kader Asmal, initiated and organized a merger of universities to create less silo-type institutions. So, for example, the University of Durban-Westville, where my mother used to teach the violin, merged with the University of Durban, Howard College, to form the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So we didn't have these racially isolated universities. And similarly, the University of Northwest which was Potchefstroom University, merged with the University of Mabato to create the University of the Northwest. And there were various examples of this. Now, the relevance of this to UWC was that the plan was that UWC would have disappeared and have been merged, partly with the University of Stellenbosch and partly with the University of Cape Town. And this was heavily resisted by the then rector of UWC on the basis that it would deprive South Africa of one of its institutional icons, because UWC is widely regarded, and there is historical evidence of this, as the University of the Struggle. The ANC in exile, the leading academics in the ANC in exile came back and chose UWC as the site from which they formulated proposals for the new constitution. I'm talking now about Khada Asmal, Albie Sachs, Bulanani Guka, and various other people who went on to high positions. I've already mentioned Bridget Mabandla and so forth. And ultimately, this plea to keep UWC as an independent institution was acceded to. So we kept our identity, but it was on the basis that UWC had to grow in numbers to be equal in size to Stellenbosch and UCT to justify its existence. So that was the rationale behind the huge growth in numbers over the course of a decade, with an institutional plant that didn't actually have the wherewithal to accommodate it. Classrooms were overflowing. There weren't enough places in res. Of course, that's a general thing now with universities, because we've had this huge access to education influx with the advent of NSFAS and student fees being waived, as it were, or students don't have to pay, so that education has become available to all. So all universities are experiencing the same problem with student housing and with access influx. And you'll remember about 4 years ago there was actually a death at the University of Johannesburg, I think, with people queuing to try and get into the admissions office. But on the other hand, I think it's done UWC good. We acquired certain faculties as part of the non-merger. So we acquired nursing from Stellenbosch, although Stellenbosch have resumed nursing as a subject in the last 2 years. We acquired dentistry from Stellenbosch, and I think our reputation for some of our disciplines in community and health sciences, I've heard very recently as Sunday, is absolutely outstanding for subjects such as dietetics and occupational therapy and so on and so forth. So UWC has really graduated from what used to be if I can use racial terminology, a coloured institution to graduate people to work in the provincial administration, teachers and nurses and nurses and police officers, to an academic institution of considerable repute, with A-rated researchers, and I know I am one, but they're far more in the sciences, with international links across the world, with many journals that the university produces, which are highly regarded. So it's entered into a completely different phase in my 27 years that I've been there.
As you said.
For me, it is very significant.
Hugely.
I can't believe it. And also, a friend of mine who I work quite closely with from another university said, I can't believe you got an A rating for research in children's rights. Yeah. It's the most marginal of law subjects. And that you could be recognized for that is unbelievable. So, yeah. So that's very significant for me.
Tell me a bit
Well, I think that those were probably more considerable than even I recognize. I've never been awarded any research prize at the law faculty in 27 years. And that's just at the law faculty. In fact, when I started out in academic life many, many years ago, and not at UWC, I was told I didn't have the makings of an academic because I couldn't do research. And I had no future and that I should leave, so I did. I went to another university. So, and of course in those days, this is now pre-1990, if you were pregnant, you didn't get maternity leave. There was no such thing, it was not recognized. So I think my fellow ladies at the law faculty have it pretty cushy right now. And I sometimes tell them that, which they don't like, because they complain a lot about the double burden of being a woman and a mother and a caregiver. And I just think, well, you know what? I can remember sitting in hotels while I was on the law commission project committees, dripping breast milk everywhere because my 9-month-old baby wanted to be fed and she was in Cape Town and I was in Pretoria.
very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of traveling in my life, a lot of traveling, which means relying on other caregivers, such as the husband who just walked into this room, but he also had a job. He was a partner at a law firm, so it wasn't exactly that he,
Sure.
yeah. And relying on other people to look after one's children and to get the schedules right, because between the three of them, they had 17 extramural activities. Ballet, gymnastics, swimming, water polo. And I remember my youngest, who I'm terribly fond of, she's going to do a doctorate at Oxford next month in law, telling everybody that she was the head of a child-headed household. Which on the one hand shows her familiarity with children's rights, but on the other hand is also a bit disconcerting. This is when she was about 15.
Very indignant that she's...
I do. I have to say being dean was extremely difficult, and I had a line manager that I really did not like at all, and he didn't like me either, and he, particularly because I was a white woman, and that's the only time I've ever experienced racism at UWC.
Sure.
So you can write down his name if you want. But other than that, I have experienced nothing really but courtesy and helpfulness on the part of the staff, administrative and otherwise, at UWC. I mean, most of my abiding memories relate to my travels and some of the exciting and less exciting things that I endured, such as when I went to South Sudan in 2014 in the middle of the conflict. I was appointed as a member of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. I was nominated by the government of South Africa, and I served a 5-year term from 2011 to 2016. I would love to still be on the committee, but unfortunately there's now a rule relating to regional representation, and there are already 2 members from Southern Africa, so that's the end of that. But in 2014, I led a delegation to South Sudan in the middle of the most dreadful, dreadful conflict. And we organized at a huge expense a helicopter to take us to one of the refugees, because the fighting between the clans was such that people had split and gone off into different refugee camps. So we went by helicopter to a refugee camp, which was absolutely ghastly. Coincidentally, the manager of the refugee camp, Hazel, I can't remember her surname, was ex-UWC,
Oh, wow.
working for the UN. Yes, it was absolutely uncanny. When I walked in there and she said, "Are you from UWC?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, so am I."
Oh, wow.
But on the way back, after this day out in the mud with my size 13 boots that I had to go and buy at a general store, gum boots to go through the mud, we we climbed into the helicopter with the pilot and the co-pilot, who started speaking Afrikaans to me, and they were from Rwanda. Yes, but they trained in Port Elizabeth, so this was another little feature of my of my trip. And then, while we were up in the air, the floods came down. It was pouring with rain, and the co-pilot came to the back of the helicopter. These are army helicopters. These are not luxury helicopters, so you're wearing earmuffs and things like that. And he handed us each a torch, and he said, "Just open the torch and look for mountains, because we don't want to crash." So we did, and we didn't crash. And we did see mountains with a little torch 6 inches long with a little round light 1 inch by diameter. So I've had some interesting journeys in my life. I'm sure this is not relevant for your article, but
It's lovely. It just adds colour to a very long, illustrious career. It's lovely. And then I'd like to know what next.
well, I've applied for a job in the UK, just one, and I got it.
That's fantastic.
It was just a kind of spur of the moment thing. And I'm waiting for a work permit and visa to go. I have 2 children in the UK, and the third one, my oldest daughter's going in December, and I have 2 sisters there and a brother, and my husband's brother's also there, so
Family.
it's just for family reasons. Yeah, and I won't be working in children's rights.
I was going to ask if the new job is in
Nope,
children's rights.
it's not. It's at the moment it'll be basic undergraduate teaching, but then ultimately I'll be working on developing a master's program and also mentoring staff, because that's one of my specialities, is mentoring staff to get their doctorates and to publish and to help them with things like that. In fact, my own daughter published her first article whilst she was a law student in her 3rd year at Stellenbosch. And she's now published 5 articles, and she's, well, she isn't quite yet registered for her doctorate, so her publishing career is doing quite well. But I mean, the same goes for staff that I've mentored, including the other Deputy Dean, Leah Mwambeni, who came to me to ask me to be her mentor already in 2005 or 2006. And now she's got an illustrious international career, books, articles, Deputy Dean of Teaching and Learning, so forth. So I'm happy to do that.